How time flies, just one race left in 2019. And while the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix isn't exactly a fan favourite, it is our final chance to witness the F1 until March next year. Let's make the most of it. Welcome to the Formula One Grid Talk podcast, where we'll be previewing this weekend's Abu Dhabi GP. We are powered by F1 Chronicle. Visit f1chronicle.com for news, reviews, and opinions on all things F1. Hosting today will be me, George Howson, and joining me today are sports journalist Mikhail Kataya.
Hey.
Sports journalist Dev Tyagi.
Hey, hi.
And recently graduated Master of Engineering, Jack Watson. Thank you for joining us, mate, and congrats once more on that. That's a huge achievement.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been quite a ride, but fantastic to finally get it done. And if any potential employers are out there, hit me up.
What's your SoundCloud, mate? You need to plug it.
It's all about the plug.
Hey, to preview race 21 of 21 for 2019. I can't believe it's already almost done this season. Championship battle already done, obviously. Lewis Hamilton confirmed first as champion. Valtteri Bottas confirmed second, Mikhail. But how do you think Mercedes are going to fare this weekend? Because quite a few of us thought that they were going to do really well around Brazil. They were kind of off it, weren't they? Yeah,
Brazil was definitely not a strong performance by them at all. I mean, just highlighted by the DNF of Valtteri as well. I don't know. I do feel like Abu Dhabi is always a good track for them, though, considering that they've had scooters for, I don't know, last, 4 or 5 Grand Prix there, basically. So I do still think that they're maybe not overall, like, outstanding favorites, but I would still put them to be up there, competing strongly for the victory with both cars, I would say. Definitely much stronger than Red Bull or Ferrari. Yeah, on paper, they'd definitely be up there. But and as we've seen in the past, like, I think Mercedes have won every single Abu Dhabi GP in this modern turbo hybrid era. Hamilton winning about 3 of those, I believe. Rosberg won, Bottas won. But obviously, Bottas, he's not had a particularly bad year, it's fair to say, but he did well there in 2017 around Abu Dhabi. He's got a decent chance of the win this weekend, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. After the not such a memorable performance down in Brazil, I think the top teams like Ferrari and Mercedes especially would like to bow out in grand fashion. So definitely Bottas and Hamilton, I think we could be expecting some good on-track battles. And I think he would be bolstered by the fact that he's won here in the past. So I think, we might be in for a good show from Valtteri's point of view. So let's see what happens.
Let's hope so. Let's hope it's competitive, because that's something we can't say for too many of the races around Yas Marina in the past. But yeah, so behind the Mercedes, obviously, you've got a pretty intense battle between Formula One's 2 biggest future stars, Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. Verstappen having an 11-point lead on Leclerc going into this race. Given that Verstappen obviously won in Brazil, Jack, it's fair to say that he's a pretty big favourite to take that 3rd spot in the championship.
Absolutely. He's certainly got the momentum behind him in terms of results. Leclerc, obviously, we had that issue at Brazil. So it's interesting. I'll be interested to see how Ferrari deal with their 2 drivers if they are close on track. If not, I mean, they can obviously just let them race their own battles. But if it turns out they're 3rd and 4th, covered by, half a second, they're probably inevitably going to wind up interfering with each other. And I suspect Ferrari could rein it in just to get a double finish at the end of the season. Yeah,
I mean, that's the thing as well, isn't it? It's going to be very interesting to see how Ferrari could deal with this battle, because they've tried using team orders. It doesn't really work. They've tried letting them race. That ended disastrously last time in Interlagos. I mean, at least, Mikhail, there's plenty of runoff in Abu Dhabi, At least they won't be able to take to the grass if one pushes the other off the track. But going into this, Ferrari just need a solid result to go into 2020 and kind of level things out, because again, we say it time and time again, they've had the fastest car for the second half of the season.
Yeah, and for sure, Bro, I mean, Interlagos was a disaster. That's obvious. Yeah, I don't know. Always, if they don't get a good performance in Abu Dhabi, I don't know how they're gonna, continue being the fastest car in 2020, because just the feelings in the team when you go to winter break after having two awful performances and having the fastest car for half a season without almost any wins to show, I would say. Yeah, it's difficult. So definitely should be a Ferrari. Like Ferrari definitely should get a good performance here, but I don't know if they will. I honestly don't know if they will.
It's difficult to say, isn't it? Because I thought after Cota, where they were miles off, I thought that's a one-off. But they weren't on it in Brazil either. They were not up with Hamilton and Verstappen. And when you think they probably should be at least challenging it. It's definitely interesting. And Abu Dhabi, I think, is a track that maybe wouldn't suit the Ferrari that well. I mean, they've got the straights, but there's just quite a lot of twisty bits that I think will probably favour the Red Bull more and probably the Mercedes more too. So it's going to be very interesting to see. I mean, I want to get your take on this. I mean, just what the hell happened in Brazil? I mean, it's just a culmination of so many errors by Ferrari this season, and I think it just encapsulates their 2019 really perfectly. Fast, but just really bad strategy, not under control.
One of the most exasperating moments that we've had all season this year was what we witnessed down at Interlagos. If you actually were to break down the entire episode when the two cars came together, then you would find that it was the faintest of touches that Vettel's car made while contacting Leclerc's. But then the aftermath was absolutely disastrous for the Red Flag team. All we should do is that we should hope for an error-free weekend, because I think in all certainty the two drivers must have moved on from that. I mean, at least the Tifosi would expect that. And nothing better than emerging at the end of the season with a victory in their kitty, Also individually from Leclerc's point of view, he's had, some consecutive lackluster finishes. He finished fourth in Mexico, fourth at Cota. And he would really want to keep Max Verstappen's marauding bay by ahead of him somehow and getting to the third on the stand.
Yeah, Max Verstappen's definitely his big rival in the championship, and
Yeah.
I'm sure Leclerc would love to go to Paris for the awards ceremony in his first year in a top team. That'd be incredible for him. But he's got a job on. He's got a big job on. I mean, 11 points is a big gap, especially when you're probably not going to go for the win. But we'll see how it shakes out. It's definitely an interesting one. Another interesting, but I'm going to keep going over these battles in the championship. There's a lot of drivers that are very close. Two drivers that are actually tied, Jack, believe it or not, after both their podiums in Brazil. Pierre Gasly and Carlos Sainz, both on 95 points. They're battling out for best of the rest in sixth. That's a titanic scrap, that. I never expected to be saying that after Gasly's horror showing at Red Bull this first half of the season.
No, absolutely. I mean, he's come alive, hasn't he? It's such an unusual thing, but since being in that Toro Rosso, he's just been so much more comfortable than with the pressure of Red Bull hanging over him. And to see him up in sixth now against sensible people who we could say probably had the far majority of best of the rest performances, like F1 1.5 champion, if you like. But if I was going to pick, I'd say you're probably more likely to wind up with Sainz on top, I would think. He's just had that sort of slightly more consistent season overall. I mean, we know Brazil was fortunately an outlier for Gasly, a bit of a yes on the move, but I would reckon it's with Sainz for this one.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. But I think the Toro Rosso should be a decent car around Abu Dhabi. There's a lot of slow corners, and that Honda engine is no slouch in a straight line.
Absolutely. We saw that performance on the front straight of Brazil. Outdragging a Mercedes is not to be sniffed at. And to be fair, we have seen Red Bull hitting very high speeds in speed traps on and off throughout the season. So they've certainly come forwards. And I mean, I've been proved wrong a lot on these preview episodes. I wonder if it's going to happen again.
You're not the only one. Don't worry. Oh yeah, so it's definitely an interesting one, and I'd have to wager, honestly, if I had to put money on it, I'd say that Honda engine is actually faster than the Renault. It's definitely more reliable. But yeah, I'd probably go for Sainz just because that McLaren has been the best of the rest car this year. Overall, it's quite comfortably heading the championship of the competition. But yeah, but in addition to all this, there's actually a third driver in all this. It's Alexander Albon. He's there's a bit of a gap, 11 points, but in the Red Bull, he's got a decent potential of getting that best of the rest. Mikhail, this is a really good battle actually for sixth place in the championship, isn't it?
It is. It's a very good battle. I don't know whether Albon is just a little bit too far off of Gasly and Sainz, because 11 points, as you said, it would take a lot. Like I would think Albon would have to get his maiden podium position to actually get that place, because I'm sure either Sainz or Gasly will end up scoring pretty high with the best of the rest. So I still would put it as a Gasly and Sainz battle, which honestly personally surprises me, the fact that Albon hasn't been able to overtake Gasly. Obviously, he was very unlucky in Brazil with Hamilton's move, but yeah, I think he's just out of reach for P6.
Yeah, it's a bit of a stretch, but I think, Dev, you'll agree with me. If anybody deserves a podium at the moment in F1, it's probably Albon. I mean, he was so unlucky in Brazil, and he's shown incredible speed since going to Red Bull. I think it'd be feel very hard done by if he doesn't get sixth in the championship after the whole race.
Yeah, absolutely. I second you completely on that thought. It was heartbreaking, Lewis turned into him, and then he was just essentially a back marker. He couldn't do anything from that point. But I think we must, give all the credit in the world to Albon for carving out a place of his own in a team which has Max Verstappen, dominating the charts. It's never easy to stand up to Mad Max. So I think in a short span of time, Albon has really carved a place for himself, and he has been rewarded for his consistency by a complete seat for the next races in 2020. I think he would really want to give his absolute best for Red Bull. And I think speaking on the car speed in the slow corners and the long straights at Abu Dhabi, I think it might even prove to be a competitive machine for the likes of Ferrari, especially up there. So who knows?
Who knows, indeed. It's going to be an interesting one, I think. I hope it's just competitive, like I said earlier on. Yeah, Albon will feel a bit hard done by, especially being took out by Hamilton, who's been pretty much faultless this year apart from that one race. He'll feel very hard done by that. But yeah, unfortunately, that's racing. And, for a guy that thought he was going to be racing in Formula E this year, after last year's Abu Dhabi GP, I think, he's not going to be complaining, in one of the top teams. And who knows, from 2021, or maybe even from next year. Red Bull are very competitive at the moment. He could be in a championship-winning car. Who knows? But yeah, so moving on. Daniel Ricciardo's in a bit of a no man's land in ninth in the championship. Behind him, it's very tight. Sergio Perez, 46. Lando Norris, 45. And Kimi Räikkönen, Mikhail, has ended up thrusting himself into that battle thanks to his fourth place in Brazil. Who's your money on to take 10th in that battle?
I would probably go with Norris. In all honesty, I would probably go with McLaren being the best overall car for Abu Dhabi. I mean, Perez might surprise me. I don't see the Alphas doing well. Obviously, not as good of a job as they did in Brazil, but even a double points finish is quite far-fetched. I don't think they will be able to do that. At least they're not anywhere as strongly positioned for that as the McLarens are. So, and the Racing Point is just a little bit of a question mark. So I would go with Norris on that with quite high certainty.
No, that's fair enough. I can see that. I think he's definitely in the best car at them. But Perez is on a hell of a run at the moment. 7 points finishes in the last 8 races. So yeah. You'd be brave to bet against him scoring points at least. But we'll see how that shakes out. Interesting one here, Jack. Right at the bottom of the championship, Kubica against Russell. Just 1 point in it. Who's getting out? Who's getting out on top?
I mean, given our last race, I don't know. anything could happen.
Hey, Russell finished 12th. Fair play to the guy. He had a hell of a race.
Yeah, oh no, absolutely. That was an amazing performance. Keeping his nose clean, but I mean, I think the points will tell a different story to the season, and I mean, hell, Kubica has already pretty much confirmed that with his him moving on to other projects. So yeah, I mean, 1 point in it, but I think we know how that is going to play out.
Yeah. And I think, I've said it a bunch of times, I think it'd be so unfair on Russell, you know. Someone takes a glance at the championship, they'll be like, oh, this Russell guy, he's the only one who didn't score. He got beat by his teammate. He's rubbish, but it's just so unfair on the kid. He's been brilliant this year. He just wasn't quite there in the one race where he could have scored points. It's cruel motorsport sometimes, it really is. Yeah, so there's not that many more close battles in the Drivers' Championship. In the Constructors, though, the big one, after McLaren obviously been crowned 1.5 champions, Renault and Toro Rosso. And this is something that should have been dusted a while ago, but there's just 8 points in it. Toro Rosso get another good result in Abu Dhabi, Dev. They could take 5th ahead of Renault. That would be very humiliating for Cyril Abiteboul, for Christian Horner's second team, beat them in the Constructors' Championship.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the combined experience of both Ricciardo and Hulkenberg is far more than what Gasly and Kvyat have against their name in these top panel battle, hopefully, for finishing on the 5th spot in the Constructors. But I think we might have to watch out for what could possibly be a late assault by the Torpedo at Abu Dhabi, because he hasn't really been in top form in the past couple of races. He was, I think the speed of Toro Rosso was about nearly as good as the Renaults. In fact, slightly much better, in fact, especially playing well into the hands of Gasly. So I think they would really want to give it everything, this being the 21st and the final season, the final race of the season. But yeah, I think I'm going to be feeling a bit sad personally for Hulkenberg if he loses out. And he's not able to score any points whatsoever. Could very well be his final ever race, final ever chance. So I was reading somewhere, final ever chance to score an F1 podium. So I don't know, unless the Ferraris or Mercedes finish with the DNF, you never know.
It would be so Hulkenberg for him to get a podium after all this, after all the chances, after the pole.
How many years in Formula One? Almost 10 years now? 9 to 10 years?
Yeah.
10 years. That's a long time.
It's a very long time.
One of the most polarizing figures, I would say, of contemporary sport. You have those fans who will always back him, and then there are those who you run into Facebook immediately discarding his presence, saying that should just bounce off to Formula E or something like that. Heartbreaking.
You know, and he is a very polarizing figure, Hulkenberg, and I am very sad to see him go. He's someone that I thought, you know, put him in a top car, he'll perform, and he's never had the chance to. But you could also argue that he's maybe perhaps not deserved it on his performances. You know, he's had cars that have been good enough to get podiums before, like the Force India. Like Perez got podiums when he was at Force India with him. And whenever he's got the chance to, he just seems to ball it, for lack of a better term. Brazil 2012, he crashed himself out in difficult conditions, albeit. Azerbaijan 2016, he crashed himself out. Germany this year, he crashed himself out. There's probably some more as well that I can't think of. Obviously, Brazil, he got his pole in 2010, but Williams wasn't really at it. He was always going to get beat in that one.
Or if you were to actually rewind the clocks back to the 2010 season, his car was pretty much identical to what Fisichella had in 2009. Remember when he was just marginally a few seconds behind Raikkonen's Ferrari at Spa-Francorchamps. But Fisi managed to bag a podium. The very next year, almost the same car handling, the same feeling, Force India, and Hulkenberg's first year there, and then nothing remarkable again, you know. So, it's just not being at it.
I see what you're saying, Dev. Part of it is that, correct me if I'm wrong by all means, but I'm pretty sure during that season, until Spa, Force India didn't score any points. And that was a bit of a freak performance. I don't know what they did. I don't know if they had the development beforehand. They gave him a bunch of pace.
Was that not when they got cursed halfway through the season?
No, that was 2003, I think, something like that. No, Spa was Spa went ahead that year, and Hulkenberg, Fisichella was just incredible pace, almost beat Raikkonen's Ferrari. I think he got pole as well for that race. But Hulk in his first, I think Hulk had a good first year. I mean, he was scoring points regularly in a car that was pretty midfield. I mean, who was his teammate this year? Was it that year? Was it Sutil?
I think it was Adrian Sutil.
Yeah, I think so too.
Was it?
And I think Sutil did beat him, but also Sutil was more experienced. So it's a tough one. He's a very polarizing figure. But I think everybody here will agree that there are drivers that have contracts for next year that are not as good as Hulkenberg. Drivers like Stroll, drivers like, you could argue, Kvyat, drivers like roster now, drivers like Grosjean, drivers like potentially Giovinazzi, although I don't think Giovinazzi does deserve his seat. It's a tough one. It's a really tough one. But I do feel sorry for him. But at the same time, he's not performed that well, and Renault are always going to jump at getting a young French driver in their car in Ocon. He's a real talent for the future as well. So, yeah, it's definitely a polarizing one.
Plus, he has age on his hands, so he has all the time in the world to make mistakes, learn from them, and then make an impression. Hulkenberg has had all those opportunities and hasn't really get it down.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, he's a Le Mans winner. He's won Le Mans. He won it in his one attempt. He's a very quick driver. I don't know where he's going next year. I could see him going to endurance.
I think the rumours are DTM. I think he's lining up a DTM driver with Audi.
Ooh,
that could be good, actually.
And that's got a lot of future in it. Well, with it merging with Super GT into this Class 1 category. So it could open up a whole lot more, because there are also, if he goes to Super GT side, that is more endurance aspect. Then if he seems at home like he was at Le Mans, may well wind up there.
Yeah. I think endurance potentially suits him more, because it's the kind of category where you can go flat out pretty much 100% every lap and not have to worry about the tyres. Maybe the tyres is something that's limited him a bit, because in junior formula, Hulkenberg was unstoppable. He was up there with Hamilton and Rosberg during their careers. He was absolutely on it. So yeah, there's a lot of drivers like that at the end of the day. I mean, you could argue the same with Gasly this year with Red Bull. He's clearly a quick driver. He's doing amazing in the Toro Rosso, but that Red Bull car didn't suit him. Maybe you could argue a few of the F1 cars that Hulkenberg's had haven't really suited him as well as what he had in GP2 and WEC and series like that. So yeah, very, very sad to see Hulkenberg go, but unfortunately, unless an absolute miracle happens, he will leave Formula One with the record of the most race starts at a podium. So,
absolutely.
Very unfair, but that's statistics. They can be cruel and they can be kind. I'm trying to think. I don't think we're really saying goodbye to anybody else apart from Robert Kubica at Williams. I think it's pretty much confirmed he's not going to be in the sport next year. Now, a very controversial figure in himself, in a way, Mikhail, since his return to the sport. I mean, obviously, very, very quick, like 10 years ago, but, it's a return that, in hindsight, perhaps he shouldn't have done.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one to call. Obviously, he wanted to come back and show everyone that he is still able to race, even though he is merely a shadow of what he was before his injury. But was it the best choice? And from whose perspective? I mean, for Williams, because the car this season has been awful anyway, so having a disparity with the drivers doesn't really matter that much. For himself, he proved that he can drive the car and, not be that far behind. And he did score at one point, so technically he did get success as well. But, yeah, it was great to see him back. And to be fair, I don't feel like any other driver would have, been feeling that seat drastically better than what he did. So, I think it was a nice tryout, but kind of glad he's gone for next year, though.
Yeah, I think there's there's a few aspects to all this. I think the biggest factor to all of it is that he was out of the sport for 9 years, Jack. You know, I mean, if you don't do anything for 9 years, we've seen champions come back and not be the same again. Alan Jones had time out of F1, and when he came back, he wasn't there really. And you could argue even the great Michael Schumacher, when he returned to Italy at over 40 years old, you know, he wasn't the same force that he once was, really. I mean, 9 years is probably too long to have out the sport, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, we've seen like how much the cars have changed, and he as a driver would have changed. He may have lost that edge that he had before he had to take his time off. And the cars themselves have become more difficult to drive. Having done most of his testing in a lower downforce car, that might have had an unexpected effect with him. I mean, we've seen flashes of like what he could do. Like we know Russell is a hard-nosed racer, and we know that he can really push that Williams to its extremes. And we've seen when they go wheel to wheel, Kubica's not, like, his racecraft is still there. He's not lost that, but the injury and, like you say, the time, it will always have a negative effect. And when Formula One's regulations have been of turbulent as they have been as of late, I suppose the writing was on the wall before he even turned up. I'm happy that he had a go. I will admit I was one of those on the hype train that was hoping he'd be back somewhere on par with Russell, but unfortunately not to be.
Yeah, I think all of us wants to see him do well. I'd like to believe that not many people would wish him badly, you know. It's an incredible story to come back with the injuries he had, all the time he's had off. And, you know, I mean, when he was doing his testing for Renault and for Williams, you know, he was almost on the pace of their drivers. I think he was faster than Stroll and Sirotkin in 2018 in the Williams. So clearly he had some pace. Maybe it's, you know, Russell just being that quick. I mean, this kid potentially is a future champion. You know, he's really something, I think. But I think the injuries probably played a lot in his mind as well. You know, I remember, obviously he didn't get injured, but it's the age thing as well. You know, I remember Damon Hill talking about his last season in '99 when he was 40 years old, I think. And, you know, he just said that he didn't have the same desire to go as ridiculously quick as possible because he didn't need it. I mean, I think that probably the injuries played a lot on his mind, Dev. That's why he's not willing to throw the car around like he did 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think one of the great mysteries for 2019 season is how Kubica might have fared had he had a better car at his disposal. You know, somebody might just be intrigued at speculating how he might have fared to put him in Kimi's car. Would he have gone flat out? Because I don't think it makes for a pretty sight when you are out-qualified time and again by a rookie driver, even though that driver is a gifted driver and somebody who Williams would be more keen to invest their resources in. So it sucks to be in Kubica's seat right now. And then moving on, becoming a reserve driver at Racing Point is a bit of a letdown. I would still personally put my bet on him than that Lance Stroll character. But yeah, that's what it is. It's sad to be Robert Kubica. We must hail him for the mighty comeback that he's made, as did Lewis Hamilton. And, you know, he was praising him all the time. He much deserved. But then it's almost like arriving at the big stage and then being part of the audience, not being on the stage, actually.
Yeah.
It's a very sad story.
Yeah, I mean, we'll stress it again. I mean, it's an incredible comeback with the injuries. Yeah. Look up, if you don't know about it, look up the injuries that he has. Look at his left arm or his right arm. I can't remember which one it is, but you know, you can just tell how drastically different it is to his other one. And you know, he literally has to drive some corners one-handed. And if you try doing that in your road car, it's difficult. Try doing that in a Formula One car at the speeds they do. You know, that just shows tremendous talent.
Insane.
Yeah, incredible bravery to do that. So yeah, I mean, there's been a few stories going around, obviously, in F1. We didn't really touch them on last time because it was such an eventful race we had to review. One of the big ones, Mikhail, is that Formula One is planning to go carbon neutral by 2030. And now, admirable that they want to try this, but it's very difficult to see how they're going to do it. That's a big statement.
Yeah, when I first read about it and went through like just some of the articles, I kind of felt, well, I mean, at first, of course, it's a publicity stunt of its own. Second, it definitely is interesting to see, let's say 5 years on, when we're actually starting to see the innovation of how the cars and how the entire organization evolves and how the sport evolves, whether that's a possibility to actually become carbon neutral by 2030. I mean, I'm not one to jump on the bandwagon of like hating the idea, obviously, but it's just one that I find a little bit odd, but at the same time it makes complete sense to just make a public statement like this and kind of try to greenwash the sport, if anything else. Now, whether that's right to do or not, that's a different story.
Yeah, there's a lot going around in the news about businesses trying to go carbon neutral, and you never know. They might manage it, but I just think for something like F1, where I think they said that 1% of the emissions actually came for the cars out track on the racetrack. It's all to do with the event itself, the teams getting there, shipping their goods around the world. That's going to be very, very difficult because they'd have to change everything. They'd have to change all the planes they're on, and the teams don't own the planes. The teams must use third-party planes, surely. So how they're going to manage that, no idea. But
it's not even just that. It's not even just that. You've also got the emissions of all the spectators and how many hundreds of thousands across the season are making the trips. That is where the majority of it comes. And then you've got the calendar itself. Like what is it? You've got Monaco and France, and then in the middle of that, they're flying across the Atlantic to Canada and then back into France. So,
yeah,
they could do it. They absolutely could do it, but it's a hell of a lot of work to do. And it's also like the amount that they'd have to lay on encouraging punters to start getting to the track on public transport or pre-arranged transport, stuff like that. The logistic, like it's not just like saying the cars, the logistics are such a beast on their own that they've really got to think about considering that.
Yeah, it's a hell of an effort if they manage to do it. But, aim high, and if you don't quite achieve it, maybe you'll get it a bit later. It's good that they're trying to do something at least, though. I think that's admirable in itself. But realistically, 11 years to do that, I'm not convinced, I'll be honest. But who knows, a lot can happen in 11 years. Now, Jack, one thing I wanted to ask about, you were pretty apprehensive when it was announced that, Zandvoort was coming back to the calendar for next year. You didn't want to see your precious track be butchered by the F1 corner gods, the Herman Tilke and lights like that. I don't know if you saw the story. It's been announced that one of the corners, I think the last corner, will be banked at 18 degrees, which is a lot. If you've gone up an 18% hill, you know about it, which is pretty much the same as what it used to be on the old banks of Monza, 21% for Monza back in the day. So, I don't know about you, but I'm a bit apprehensive about how those front wings are going to stack up on it.
That is pretty much the opposite of what I thought was going to happen, I will be honest. I know that Zandvoort doesn't exactly have much room to manoeuvre in terms of extending run-off zones and the like. So I honestly thought it would be a case of Mickey Mouse chicanes here and there. And again, the track itself is so compact in the first place. From what I've seen so far, it does look like they're going to try and maintain as much as possible. I mean, even then, it's not great. Like F3 struggles to race properly around there, and WTCR struggles. But I mean, hell, look, it's going to be an event for the drivers, and it might wind up being like Suzuka. It's not the easiest to overtake on, but it's a love for the drivers because it's such a challenge. It's a love for the fans because when overtakes do happen, it's normally pretty spectacular. So, I mean, it might be okay. I mean, that might just be me trying to be positive about this. I mean, I'm sure it'll be better than Catalonia, but we'll see. We will see.
We'll see. Yeah, I mean, Catalonia, you'll be pleased to know, Jack. I'm pretty sure it is on the calendar for next year.
It is on the calendar, I believe. It is, yeah.
It's Hockenheim what we're losing, which is a shame. 22 or 23 races, something ridiculous like that. So something has to go. It is a shame that it's Germany that has to go. I think that's very unfair. When the likes of Abu Dhabi and countries like that don't really have a motorsport history. I mean, Vietnam's getting a race next year. Bloody hell. Keep forgetting about that. Yeah, so keeping on the Dutch theme as well, I've been reliably informed that around half of our downloads come from the Netherlands. So thank you very much for that. So my prediction for this weekend is that Max Verstappen will win, take pole, and get fastest lap. I'm sure that has not had any bearing on that prediction. Actually, no, I am going to go for Max Verstappen for the win. Genuinely, predictions time. Mikhail, who are you saying?
Well, I mean, you made my job pretty easy saying Max. Now, I will divert. I have my trust in Mercedes still. I think Valtteri might have a good. I know Brazil wasn't his best performance, but the other parts of the last third of the season have been good. So I think the car is good enough, and I think he still has the hunger for the end of the season to score one more win. So I'd put Valtteri on the top podium.
Fair enough. Jack, who are you going for the win?
I would have to second with Valtteri. My boys let me down for the season. I lost my 20 quid on him not winning, but
I remember that.
Yeah, it's not exactly like he's been ground down or anything. Hamilton's won again. It's probably inevitable, but I reckon he's still fighting. Of course he is. In Mercedes themselves will let him race, no problem. So yeah, I'd go Valtteri.
Yeah, with Ocon and F1 next year, that seat is definitely under pressure going forward in 2021. Russell as well. He'll be at Williams. He'll still be performing. It's a big jump up to come up to Mercedes. Dev, who's your choice for the win?
I think Max for the win, Leclerc for the fastest lap, and Bottas second.
Fair enough.
Okay.
I'm going to go with Bottas second as well. I think Abu Dhabi is one of his better tracks. I think it suits him. He seems to suit the kind of... sorry about this, but they're not very good ones. He seems very good around Sochi. He seems very good around... he doesn't seem particularly bad around Bahrain. Let's be honest here, it's not the best track.
It's not, and I think in the past edition of the races, we haven't really seen anything thrilling. Personally, for me, the best Abu Dhabi Grand Prix was the Kimi Raikkonen Leave Me Alone Grand Prix.
Yeah.
So I think from 2012, they've all just been wanting to leave the circuit alone. But I don't know. I mean, Red Bull win here could spice up things and could really set things in the right tonality for the 2020 season. I think it would definitely give Horner a great boost, because let's remember, I think all the time Mr. Helmut Marko was saying that this car can achieve no more than 3 wins. And I think it's either matched that or has gone on to slightly better that. Another Max Verstappen victory would really make it more interesting for what follows next year.
Yeah, it's matched it. He's got 3 wins, Max Verstappen this year. And that's the thing, if they win this race, it's just another underlining. I mean, they've won 2 in a row at the end of the year, and that's regardless of what Mercedes did in the first half of the year, on form, Red Bull are almost up there really. They've really been on it. But going back to what you said about Kimi Raikkonen as well, Dev, I think my favourite thing about Abu Dhabi is potentially, Raikkonen's description of the track, where he just said the first few corners are pretty good, but the rest is shit. So, honestly, I kind of agree with the guy. I really do. So I'm going for Bottas for second, and Lewis Hamilton I'm going to put third, the world champion. Ending on not a high, but a better result. Hopefully he'll keep his nose clean this time. Kale, who are you going for second and third?